The dining room of my mother's house had always been a stage for family theater, where everyone played their assigned roles and no one dared to break character. Tonight, as I sat at the mahogany table that had hosted 30 years of carefully orchestrated family gatherings, I could feel the familiar weight of unspoken rules, pressing down on my shoulders like a heavy coat I couldn't remove. The crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier, casting tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth where my family sat in their usual positions. Mom at the head, my brother Richard to her right, his wife Patricia beside him, and their teenage children scrolling through their phones with the practiced boredom of people who had attended too many of these command performances. My 7-year-old daughter Lily sat beside me, her curious eyes taking in the strange tension that always seemed to hover over these gatherings like smoke from a fire no one wanted to acknowledge. She was too young to understand the complex web of secrets and lies that held our family together, too innocent to know that some truths were considered too dangerous to speak aloud. But tonight was different. Tonight, I had reached my breaking point with the charade we called family harmony. Tonight I was going to tell them about the phone calls, the documents I'd found, the truth about Dad's death that they had all agreed to bury along with his body. I had no idea that my 7-year-old daughter was about to become my most powerful ally in a battle I'd been fighting alone for 2 years. It started with a phone call I wasn't supposed to receive. 2 years after Dad's death, his former business partner called me by mistake, thinking he was reaching my brother Richard. The conversation that followed shattered everything I thought I knew about my father's final months and the circumstances surrounding his sudden heart attack. "I'm so sorry about what happened with the audit," the man said, his voice heavy with guilt. "If we had known Richard was skimming from the accounts, we never would have let your father take the blame. The stress of that investigation must have been unbearable." Richard, my golden child brother who had delivered a beautiful eulogy about Dad's integrity and honor. Richard, who had inherited Dad's business and sold it within 6 months, claiming the market conditions weren't favorable. Richard, who had been stealing from the company while Dad was dying of the shame and stress of being accused of embezzlement. The investigation that followed Dad's death had been quietly closed when Richard discovered the missing money and returned it, claiming it had been a bookkeeping error. The family had been told that Dad died of natural causes, a heart attack brought on by his age and lifestyle. No one mentioned the sleepless nights, the anxiety attacks, the way Dad had aged 10 years in his final 6 months as he tried to prove his innocence in a crime his own son had committed. I confronted Richard privately first, hoping for an explanation, maybe even an apology. Instead, I got threats disguised as family loyalty. "Dad's gone, Michael," he said, his voice cold as winter. "Dragging this up now won't bring him back. It will only destroy the family and hurt Mom. Is that what you want? To be the son who tears apart everything Dad worked to build?" But I couldn't let it go. Dad had died believing he was a failure, a thief, a man who had betrayed the trust of his business partners and employees. He had died carrying shame that belonged to his eldest son, and that truth was eating me alive from the inside. The family dinner was Mom's idea, a monthly tradition she had instituted after Dad's death to keep the family close. These gatherings had become increasingly tense as I struggled with the weight of what I knew, and Richard worked harder to maintain the fiction that everything was normal. "Michael's been having a difficult time lately," Richard announced to the table as Mom served her famous pot roast, his voice carrying the patronizing tone he used when he wanted to discredit me before I could speak. "He's been obsessing over Dad's death, creating conspiracy theories instead of accepting that sometimes people just die." Conspiracy theories. As if documented embezzlement and covered-up fraud were the products of my imagination rather than cold, hard facts. "I think it's natural to have questions," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice level for Lily's sake, "especially when there are inconsistencies in the story we've been told." "What kind of inconsistencies?" Mom asked, her voice sharp with the kind of warning that had kept family secrets buried for decades. "Well, for instance, the audit that was happening at Dad's company before he died. The missing money that was mysteriously found after his death. The fact that—" "Michael," Richard's voice cut through my words like a knife. "This isn't appropriate dinner conversation. We have children present." I looked at Lily, who was listening with the intense concentration that children bring to adult conversations they sense are important. She didn't understand the details, but she could feel the tension, the way the adults were dancing around something significant. "Maybe the children should hear the truth," I said, my voice growing stronger. "Maybe they should know that their grandfather didn't die in shame. that he was innocent of everything he was accused of. "That's enough," Mom said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades managing family crises. "We're not discussing this at the dinner table." But I was tired of being silenced, tired of protecting a lie that was destroying my ability to grieve my father properly. "No, Mom, it's not enough. Dad deserves—" I said that's enough. The silence that followed Mom's outburst was deafening. Richard looked satisfied. Patricia studied her plate like it contained the secrets of the universe, and the teenagers continued scrolling through their phones as if family drama was just background noise to their digital lives. But Lily was watching me with those clear, honest eyes that children have before the world teaches them to look away from uncomfortable truths. She had seen me struggle with grief for 2 years, had watched me become quieter and sadder without understanding why. She knew something was wrong, even if she couldn't articulate what it was. "Your father was a good man," Mom said, her voice softer now but still carrying an edge of warning. "He wouldn't want his family fighting over things that can't be changed." "He was a good man," I agreed. "That's exactly why this matters. He died thinking he was a criminal, Mom. He died believing he had betrayed everyone who trusted him. Don't you think he deserves to have his name cleared?" "His name doesn't need clearing," Richard said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "He's dead, Michael. Dead people don't care about their reputations. But living people do," I shot back. "Living people who loved him and want to remember him accurately. Living people who are tired of pretending that lies are more important than truth." The weight of 2 years of silence pressed down on me like a physical force. 2 years of attending family gatherings where we all pretended that Dad's death was just a sad but natural ending to a good life. 2 years of watching Richard benefit from the business he had helped destroy while Dad's memory remained tainted by crimes he never committed. "I have documents," I said quietly. "Bank records, audit reports, testimony from Dad's business partners. I have proof that Richard was embezzling money and that Dad was innocent of everything he was accused of." The table went completely silent. Even the teenagers looked up from their phones, sensing that something significant was happening. "Michael," Mom said, her voice barely above a whisper, "please don't do this." Richard's face had gone pale, but his voice remained steady with the kind of control that comes from years of practice at manipulation. "Michael, you're having a breakdown. This obsession with conspiracy theories is unhealthy. Maybe you should talk to someone professional about your grief. Gaslighting, the final weapon in the arsenal of people who have run out of legitimate arguments. Make the truth teller seem crazy, and you never have to address the truth itself." "I'm not having a breakdown," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "I'm trying to honor our father's memory by telling the truth about what really happened to him." "The truth?" Richard laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The truth is that Dad had a heart attack. The truth is that you can't accept that sometimes bad things happen to good people without there being some grand conspiracy to explain it. The truth is that you stole money from the company," I said, my voice cutting through his deflection like a blade. "The truth is that Dad was investigated for your crimes. The truth is that the stress of being accused of embezzlement killed him, and you let it happen because it was easier than confessing." The silence that followed was electric with tension. Mom's face had gone white. Patricia was staring at her husband with something that looked like dawning horror, and even the teenagers had put down their phones to watch the drama unfold. "You have no proof of any of that," Richard said, but his voice had lost its confident edge. "I have bank records showing transfers from company accounts to your personal accounts," I said, pulling out the folder I had brought with me. "I have emails between you and the auditors. I have testimony from Dad's business partners who said they always suspected you but couldn't prove it until after Dad died." "Michael, stop this," Mom pleaded. "Please, think about what you're doing to the family." "I'm not doing anything to the family," I said. "Richard did this when he chose to steal money and let Dad take the blame. I'm just refusing to keep his secret anymore." "You're being selfish," Richard said, his mask finally slipping to reveal the desperation underneath. "You're going to destroy everything for what? To make yourself feel better about Dad's death? To make sure Dad's grandchildren know the truth about who he really was?" Richard stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. His face was flushed with anger, and something that looked like panic. The careful composure he had maintained for 2 years finally cracking under the pressure of exposure. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice rising to a level that made Lily flinch beside me. I'm not going to sit here and listen to these delusional accusations from someone who clearly needs psychiatric help. Sit down, Richard, Mom said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades managing family crises. Let's discuss this calmly. There's nothing to discuss, Richard shouted, his control completely gone now. Michael is having some kind of mental breakdown, and instead of getting him help, you're all enabling his fantasies. He turned to face me directly, his eyes blazing with the kind of rage that comes from being cornered. You want to destroy the family over some paperwork you think you understand? You want to drag Dad's name through the mud based on your amateur detective work? I want to clear Dad's name, I said, standing up to meet his gaze. I want his grandchildren to know that he was an honest man who died protecting a son who didn't deserve his loyalty. You sanctimonious, Richard started, but Mom cut him off. Both of you, stop this right now, she said, her voice sharp with desperation. We are not airing our family's private business at the dinner table. Michael, put those papers away. Richard, sit down. We'll discuss this later, privately. No, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. We've been discussing this privately for 2 years and nothing has changed. Dad is still being remembered as a man who died in disgrace, and Richard is still benefiting from the lie that killed him. That's enough, Mom shouted, her composure finally cracking. I will not have this family torn apart by ancient history that can't be changed. It's not ancient history, I said. It's the truth about how Dad really died, and why he died believing he was a failure when he was actually a victim. Richard moved toward me, his face twisted with anger. You need to shut up right now, Michael. You need to put those papers away and stop this insanity before you destroy everything Dad worked for. Dad worked for honesty, I said, not backing down. He worked for integrity. He would want the truth to come out, even if it hurt. The truth? Richard's voice was venomous now. The truth is that you're a pathetic loser who can't accept that Dad is dead and move on with your life. That's when Lily's voice cut through the chaos like a bell in a storm. Why can't he speak the truth? The room fell silent so abruptly it was like someone had turned off the sound. Every adult face turned toward my 7-year-old daughter, who was standing beside her chair with her small hands clenched into fists, her eyes blazing with an indignation that belonged to someone much older. Why can't Daddy speak the truth? She asked again, her young voice carrying across the silent dining room with crystal clarity. Lily's question hung in the air like a judgment, delivered by the most innocent voice in the room. She looked around the table at each adult face, her 7-year-old logic cutting through years of family dysfunction with surgical precision. Grandpa always told me to tell the truth, she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. He said lying was wrong, even when it was hard to be honest. So why are you all mad at Daddy for telling the truth about Grandpa? The silence that followed was deafening. Richard's face had gone from red to pale. Mom was staring at her granddaughter with something that looked like recognition, and even Patricia seemed to be seeing the situation clearly for the first time. Because sometimes the truth hurts people, sweetheart, Mom said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. But lies hurt people too, Lily said, with the devastating logic that only children possess. And Daddy's been hurt for a really long time because he can't talk about Grandpa. She was right. I had been hurt, carrying the weight of Dad's undeserved shame for 2 years while watching Richard benefit from the lie that had killed our father. And my 7-year-old daughter had seen what the adults had chosen to ignore. That silence in the service of lies is just another form of cruelty. Richard left that night without saying goodbye. The investigation I had been threatening finally moved forward, and within 6 months the truth about Dad's innocence was officially established. Richard faced consequences, financial and legal, but more importantly, Dad's name was cleared. The family dinner stopped after that night, but Lily and I started having our own tradition, Sunday breakfast, where we tell stories about Grandpa, the real Grandpa who valued truth over comfort and integrity over peace. Daddy, Lily said one Sunday morning as we made pancakes, I'm glad you told the truth about Grandpa even when it was hard. Me too, sweetheart, I said, finally able to grieve my father properly. Me too. Sometimes it takes the voice of a child to remind us that truth isn't the enemy of family. Lies are. If this story reminded you that children see truth more clearly than adults, that silence in the face of injustice is complicity, subscribe and share this with someone who needs the courage to speak their truth. There are moments when only innocent voices dare to ask the questions adults are afraid to answer, and this is one of them.